If you're the listener, I just want to encourage you to keep an open mind and understand that for you, the journey has just begun.
Welcome to your Career Revolution podcast, the place where you will learn how to reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams. I am your host, Courtney Dyksterhouse, joined by Tamara Loring, who is the Chief of Brand Ideology at the Entrepreneur Source, and Marissa Frois, who is the CEO at the Entrepreneur Source. Both of these women, oh my goodness, they have such a deep passion to see you live out your self-sufficient dreams. So ladies, thank you once again for joining me today.
It's a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
be here. Thank you.
Of course. Well, we know that this podcast, it is based on the book, Your Career Revolution. And over the next 2 episodes, we are going to continue breaking down this book chapter by chapter. That way, by the end, you can start experiencing success and turn your dreams into a reality. Yes, you can really turn your dreams into a reality. So if you haven't listened to the first 5 episodes, go back and listen to those before diving in with us today. Well, so far we have spoken about why so many people feel like revolting. Then we had 3 episodes focusing on how to reimagine your life. And in our last 2 episodes, we are going to revolve around reclaiming the life of your dreams. Now, in today's episode, we'll take a closer look at 2 of the perceived obstacles that will trip you up along your journey. This is where it gets real. There is no time like the present. So before we dive into these obstacles tomorrow, I would love for you to recap for all of us the progress that we've already made in this podcast series.
Absolutely. So, over the past few episodes, we've helped you dream again. Like when you were a kid and failure was not an option. We've challenged you to think about some of the perceptions you have and what it will take to be self sufficient. We've given you the opportunity to weigh the pros and cons of the different vehicles so that you can dream your dream of financial independence. And because you've done that, you've come such a long way. Or have you really? Just because you've listened to a few podcasts, does that mean that you've invested the time and energy to really dig deep and do some in-depth soul searching? Have you really created a vision for your future? Do you have that North Star? Just because we've told you about coaching, does it mean that you've had the opportunity to experience the benefits of what coaching can do for you? Look, for me personally, I know that it took multiple coaching interactions for me to truly surrender and let go of beliefs and actions that were no longer serving me, and for me to truly become open to coaching. Our founder has said this so many times, and I'm sure he said it to Marissa many times too, that tomorrow there will be many days that your coach believes in your potential and your dreams, possibly even more than you do at this moment. Initially, I thought, how can that be true? But I can now see that that certainly has been the case for me. And I think that is why I absolutely love the proverb that I used last time. And it goes like this: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I mean, I just see how I thought I was ready, but I really wasn't. And in hindsight, it's crystal clear to me now. So if you're the listener, I just want to encourage you to keep an open mind and understand that for you, the journey has just begun. And perhaps by listening to the sessions, maybe you've already picked up a book, maybe you've done some of the assessments. Really, what we've done is just pique your curiosity about what is possible. So yes, absolutely, you've already started to make progress towards your new future, and we want to congratulate you on that. But in many ways, our journey has just begun. So congratulations on coming this far, but keep open mind to keep on going.
I love that. And I think you said something that's super important, Tamara. Oftentimes we tend to, not everyone, but a lot of us, when we're starting a new project or a new journey or self discovery, we do so much research that sometimes we feel like that is the action itself. And what you mentioned in this start of this episode is the importance of actually taking action too. You doing research is absolutely paramount. Listening to this podcast, that's taking in research, but then also putting into action all the things that you're now discovering.
Action is the key, right? And so many different people have said it in so many different ways, whether it's Wayne Dyer saying, when you change the way you look at things, things change, whether it's Hal Elrod, he's got the miracle equation. He talks about unwavering faith, and then relentless effort. That's when miracles occur. Or, I've heard other people say it, belief times action equals results. But action is the key. So education is part of it, but without the action, you won't actually make progress. You'll just be sitting on this knowledge and nothing will change.
Yes. I want to mention one more thing, and then we really are going to get into the stuff from today's episode, but it's just so good. You said so many good things. You mentioned that coaching for you, even for you, who you are an incredible woman who has such a passion for this. It took you a couple of times with coaching for it to really stick, for you to start to really believe and start to take action. And I think that's important for people to hear that today, because sometimes people might, I know I've done this. I've walked into something once and I'm like, see, didn't work. I knew it. I confirmed what I already believed, self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I think what you mentioned about knowing that, yes, if you have your first encounter with coaching, it will take more than one, because we have so many beliefs that have just been ingrained in us for decades, that having that coach who believes sometimes more in your dream than you do at moments, that's why being with them consistently is so important, right?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I mean, nobody expects to go to the gym once and see the benefits of it, right? So why would one coaching session do it? And of course, the lies that we've been telling ourselves, we believe them to be true, and we hold on them dearly, even if they don't serve us anymore. And it does take some time. And once the light bulb goes off, you can't believe that you had this belief, or that was, you allowed it to hold you back. But we're human beings, right? So sometimes we just need somebody else who can shed a light and help us see things from a different perspective, because we just don't know what we don't know.
We don't know what we don't know. Well, I do know that we really are going to talk about the episode today, because there is so much good content, so much. Okay, so we mentioned at the very beginning that there are some obstacles that can get in our way. And so what are the two main obstacles that you see get in people's way at this point in their journey?
Yeah. So for those that have been listening in with us for each episode, or maybe have even read the book, you've already gotten to experience some of what our journey of discovery is all about. We have talked to you about defining your goals, needs, and expectations around ILWE, your income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals. We've challenged some of your perceptions about the job market, investments, entrepreneurship, business ownership, and what it takes to be self-sufficient. And you've weighed the pros and cons of different vehicles to get you to your dream of financial independence. If you've been enjoying this journey so far, this is really just the beginning. And so, with that, it really is important to not let the following two obstacles get in your way of continuing this journey of discovery. So, first obstacle is funding, which again, if you've been listening, you should know that there's many possibilities when it comes to funding. This should really never get in your way. And then number two is indecision. The fear of making a wrong or bad decision prevents far too many people from pursuing their dreams or from even exploring possibilities. Living with the consequences of a poor decision seems like too great a risk, but in reality, they're choosing to remain in a situation that no longer serves them, which is actually a bad decision. So, our journey of discovery is designed to help people reach a point of clarity where they realize they've gathered enough information and find themselves beyond the decision making point. So, the right decision becomes so evident that not making it is clearly a bad choice.
Yeah, you can't refute it at that point. It is just
No.
that beacon, that light that Tamara was saying. It's like when the light bulb goes off,
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't go off.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that first obstacle for a minute. Funding, you mentioned. How
Yeah.
does someone successfully fund that transition when they walk away from a traditional job and steady paycheck, knowing that they still have household financial
Yeah.
responsibilities?
Yeah. So the first thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you're giving yourself enough runway financially to ensure that you get the business ramped up and can still accommodate all of your daily living expenses. Once you have those details figured out, it will take good budgeting from there to really help you stay on track. So it really is that B word, to budget properly. One other thing to consider is if you were beginning a new job, you would begin with a salary that would increase the longer you remained in your position. The transition from employee to self employed works in the same way. So essentially, you'll be cutting yourself a paycheck that will probably be a little smaller at first, but as you ramp up your business, that will grow over time with that as well.
Yes, and be patient in that process, right?
Yeah, you have to be, of course. Absolutely. It's going to take some time, but the end goal, which is what you're shooting for, is well worth that reward.
Yeah. Well, what are some things people should be considering when they're making that budget?
First, figure out exactly how much you and your family will need to maintain your lifestyle with all of its necessities and all of the activities as well. Then you should consider what you might be able to possibly cut or live without just for a short period of time. Of course, you don't want to go backwards and give up the things that you love or need, but sometimes that temporary sacrifice can help you reach your ultimate goals. So, going through that exercise is going to be important, especially in the beginning as you get things ramped up.
You mentioned, what you can cut. And I've talked to so many people specifically about budgeting, and they think that they can cut nothing. They're like,
Yeah.
oh no, I can't. Oh, I can't cut that. I have had this streaming platform for the past 10 years. My favorite show is on there.
Yeah.
And I saw something online and I found that to be very interesting. I'm going to paraphrase here, but the premise of
Yeah.
it was that lifestyle comes after wealth. Like you build the wealth and then you form the lifestyle. What are your thoughts on
Yes.
that? Meaning all of the things that you want, like the really fancy car that sometimes we get before we can afford it,
Yeah.
or the dream yacht, which I mean, again, that's never my dream because I know I'm not getting a yacht. But
Yeah.
but you understand what I'm saying. We
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we flip flop, right? We try to get the lifestyle before we really start to do all those things, the investments that are important in
Yeah.
order for us to actually see that through.
I,
Yep. I actually think T said it perfectly on one of our previous episodes. And you just heard me reference ILWE, income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. And they're in that order for a reason, right? The income has to happen first, which might mean cutting things back, again, paying yourself that smaller paycheck as things get ramped up. But then once you get there, what comes next? The lifestyle component. And then you build the wealth and equity. So it is important that you get your finances and house in order first, generate that income, and then all of those great things are going to follow, hopefully shortly thereafter. So it is important to put it in that order: income, then comes the lifestyle, wealth, and equity.
That's great. Tamara, did you want to add anything to that?
oh no, Marissa summarized it perfectly, but I 100% agree to it, right? So many times people try to live the lifestyle first, but if they don't have the income to support it, I always say that's going to be a very short run. Wouldn't you rather, make some short-term sacrifices so that you can have that in the long run?
Yes, short-term sacrifices to have long-term success. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I know in the book it calls out that an important thing to learn during the exploration phase is how to turn reactive investments into proactive investment vehicles. What are the differences and how does someone make that change?
Another fantastic question, Courtney. So, first thing is to understand the difference between investing money and spending money. I'm going to say that one more time.
Hmm.
Understand the difference between investing money and spending money. So, when you spend money on something, you're likely not thinking about it as an asset that will generate cash flow or provide a return on investment. And that is why investing money is very different than just spending it. So, by definition, the expectation of an investment is that it should give you a return on the money you put into it. Proactive investments, such as becoming a business owner, for example, really allow their owners to better predict or at least have more control over their potential ROI or return on that investment.
I love that. I know, and as people are preparing for this transition, funding starts to feel like this insurmountable barrier to self sufficiency. There's a reason why you guys have talked about funding so much. So, how can people shift their mindset around funding and get beyond those fears?
Yeah, you're so right, Courtney. Funding, one of those looming F words that we spoke about, right? It just seems like that insurmountable barrier to self sufficiency. If only I had more money, if only I had access to it, right? So, what if you could shift your mindset to no longer fear your funding options? What if you take emotion out of the equation and simply just start thinking about it as educating yourself? I'm just going out and I'm gathering the facts. I'm seeking the truth. And all I'm doing is learning about all the options as it relates to funding my future. And then, like Marissa said, only proceed if you have reasonable confidence that your investment can provide an acceptable return. Otherwise, it's not an investment, right? There should be an ROI, return on investment. So many of my mentors have impressed upon me that money is never the problem. Our attitude towards money is the problem.
Oh, that's interesting. Expand on that a little bit. Talk to me more about that concept.
Yeah, well, Marissa already mentioned in a previous episode that people tend to think that there's only one way to, let's say, fund a business, and that is to get a traditional loan. Well, and that may be true, but that is just one option, right? So education is the key. There's so many creative ways and favorable ways that you can actually gain access to capital. Popular options include things like rollovers, home lines of equity, angel funding, career capital. Yes, even your career capital has value, right? So don't forget about every single thing that you bring to the table that has leverage, including your work ethic and your transferable skills. So if you think there is no money, you're right, you're not going to have access to it. But if you start thinking creatively and thinking about what can I leverage, including my career capital, suddenly money finds a way. So like I said before, don't let the fear of not having access or perceived access to capital prevent you from learning what your options are. So it's not that money isn't available. There is an abundance of money available. But the story that we tell ourselves about whether we have access to it or not, or no, this is not going to work for me. I like to say often our beliefs about what we think is true prevents us from actually seeking or even seeing the actual truth. So yes, money is never the problem. Our attitude towards money is.
Gosh, that is so good. Thank you for that, Tamara. Okay, so even when people have a point of clarity about what the best road ahead may be, people still have this fear of making a bad or a wrong decision and then don't make a decision at all. They just stay idle. So, how can a coach help someone get out of this cycle of indecisiveness?
Oh gosh, I love that, right? Because it's so empowering when you get what's happening to you. Look, if we always knew that we had the ability to make a good or a perfect decision, you and I wouldn't have a problem with making decisions at all, right? We'd do it all day long. But what most of us fear is making a poor or a bad decision and something that maybe we won't ever be able to recover from. And that just feels so risky. So what we end up doing is we feel paralyzed and we don't make any decision at all. So we're stuck by our own indecision. So again, I would say the way you can coach yourself through it is, what if you eliminate that thought process? Wipe it away from your mind. Alleviate yourself from the pressure of making any decision, right? So if you're afraid of making the bad decision or a wrong decision, just give yourself the freedom to say, hey, I'm not going to make any decision at all. Can I do that? Usually when I ask people that, they're like, yeah, you're asking me to do nothing. I think I've got that. I can make no decision at all. And then I say, okay, think of it as merely going out and, once again, like I said with the funding options, just go out and gather the information. Just educate yourself. Can you at the very least do that? And the cool thing that happens is, if you're truly open to learning, something amazing will happen. You will start to see possibilities. You will start to reach a point of clarity. And what you'll soon realize is that as you're gathering the information, rather than feeling like you're being completely reckless or completely irresponsible or taking on unreasonable risk, right? That is really what we're afraid of. We don't want to take on unreasonable risk. We don't want to just be haphazard and, be reckless. So when we have the information and we have the knowledge, what happens is we start feeling empowered, and we have the ability then to start taking small steps towards making informed choices. So instead of making bad or wrong decisions, we make informed choices, small little baby steps. And look, it's not going to be a fear-free state. We still need the courage to take those steps. But when we take those little steps, one at a time, over time, those informed choices become the best decisions we've ever made. And yes, there are great authors out there, like Darren Hardy has written a book about the compound effect. I mean, my goodness, even Einstein says it's one of the wonders of the world, right? So I think sometimes we think it's an either or. I make a good decision or a bad decision, not realizing that we actually get to course correct along the way. We just need to make an informed choice and then course correct, course correct, course correct. And then suddenly when you look back over a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, all those people who are successful, it looks like they were overnight successes. No, those were those tiny little habits that took them to where they are today. And my dad is an entrepreneur too. And he'll say, you know, when people call him an overnight success, he's like, it only took 20 years or 25 years or a lifetime, but okay, you know, but people don't see what happens behind the scenes. They don't see those unsexy small steps that you take, but then over time, it does become the best decision you've ever made.
Yeah, you mentioned something I think that is important because we talked earlier in this episode about making no decision is a decision.
Yes.
And in some ways that can be bad, right? Because we're sitting in an analysis paralysis. But you mentioned, and I think this is important, that making no decision in this sense, if you are now just assessing what is the next best step, that is a good decision to not make a decision, right? So there's two differences in not making a decision in a bad way and not making a decision in a good way.
Right, because if we are struck with fear about making a good or a bad decision, we're actually not learning. We're not open to information. We have already convinced ourselves that this is not going to work. So if we take the decision making out of the equation, right? What actually happens is we learn, we gather information, and like an insight, we will reach a point of clarity where it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I used to think that this is not going to work for me, or this is not a possibility. Turns out it is doable. And I too can do that. And I have it within me. And it doesn't seem like this crazy, insurmountable idea anymore, right? But you kind of need to trick your mind, if you will, or in a way, it's actually a form of self-coaching. But working with a coach helps you because they shine a light on the story that you're telling yourself and the things that you're convincing yourself of, right? So yeah, the good news is it's definitely within everybody's reach, but sometimes we just need to kind of, it's a pattern interrupt, really is what it is, right? Because we don't even realize the habits that we have formed over time. So yeah, decision, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, don't make any decision at all, but that actually jolts your mind into learning and seeing possibilities and then realizing that there's an abundance of them all around you.
Well, what would you say to somebody who says, I just don't have time to start this new career discovery? I'm sure you have heard this so much. So what do you say to people who come with that?
Oh, goodness. You know, first and foremost, you know, I love quotes and proverbs and everything. And this one makes me think of the Henry Ford one, right? Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, either way, you're right. So if you're going to wait for the perfect time, I am confident the time will never arrive. There's never going to be a perfect time. Or the Chinese proverb that goes like, the best time to plant a tree would have been 20 years ago. Well, we can't do anything about the past. All we can do is focus on the future. So the second best time is now. Look, you still have freedom of choice. You can choose to postpone or simply do nothing. But why would you ever postpone learning about what's possible? My concern for you would be if you postpone it 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when we have this conversation, will you have any regrets? Because again, like I said, make no decision. I'm not asking you to take action even. All I'm asking you is to learn about what can be possible for you. I think, and we spoke about this in previous episodes, what the types of things that people fear. Is it perhaps, and are you postponing learning because you are wondering that once you have the knowledge, that you will feel obligated to yourself to take action? Because once you are armed with that, how can you in good conscience then not take action? So is it the fear of success that's telling you that, you know what, I'm just too busy right now. I cannot free my mind up to learn about it right now. And we're not asking about huge investments of time either. What if you just invested 10 minutes a day learning about yourself? But you know what? I think we're already talking to the audience that's listening to this podcast. So they're already investing time in themselves. So the other thing that comes to mind is the courage, right? Once you have the knowledge, look, this is not going to be a fear-free state. That is always hard to say. A fear-free state. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the assessment that something else is more important than fear.
Can you say that quote one more time?
Yeah, this is from Franklin D. Roosevelt. He said, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear.
I love it. You, throughout this entire podcast series, have said so many quotes that I'm like, this needs to be on a refrigerator or on a mirror. And I feel like what you just said too, I'm like, I need to write that down and post it somewhere because it's so powerful.
Oh my gosh, Courtney, that's actually funny. I do the very same thing. As a matter of fact, I have so many sticky notes that they don't actually fit on my computer screen or my office anymore. So now I have them in a little bag and I rotate them whenever inspiration hits me. But I find like, I have the thought of the day or the moment or what have you, or maybe sometimes it just sits on my computer for a week or maybe even a month, but it's something that I want to think about and reflect on and have omnipresent so that it really seeps into my psyche. So I love that you said that you would like to write it down because I do that for myself too.
That's amazing. And it's probably the reason why you have so many memorized. I'm like, how does she memorize? I mean, they're right there, just ready to fire off. And so that makes sense. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the funny thing is when people start quoting me, I'm like, oh, no, that was the Dalai Lama. That's not me.
But you are just as wise, some would say. So you're a very wise woman. Well, let's get to this final question because I'm curious about this one. When can coaching clients expect to reach a point of clarity?
Yeah, so you are the only person who can decide the next chapter of your life. Your ambitions and goals are up to you, as is the path you choose to achieve them. Therefore, the time needed to reach a point of clarity is going to vary person to person. You cannot force discovery. And like an insight, you never quite know when it's going to hit you. But if you stick with the journey, you will reach that point of clarity and will know exactly what you must do to take charge of creating your ideal future. Just trust the process, do the work, and give yourself time and freedom to explore your options. You will find the clarity you need to take that next step forward.
Trust the process. Trust the process.
Yes.
Trust the process.
Yep,
If you haven't heard
absolutely.
anything today, trust the process.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the quote that you have in the book by Jerry Sternan that says, it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than think your way into a new way of acting. I know Tamara probably has this memorized. I don't know about you, but this conversation gets me so fired up for each of the listeners because, let me say that one again. I don't know about you all, but this conversation gets me fired up for each of you to take that action and to realize that the perceived obstacles tripping you up are just that. They are perceived. They will only trip you up if you let them. So, ladies, thank you so much for teaching us this valuable lesson today.
Very
course.
welcome. It's always so much fun. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Yes, likewise. All right. Well, we've been talking about coaching throughout this podcast series and again today. So if you haven't already, go to the Entrepreneur Sources website and learn more about career ownership coaching. Their ever-growing nationwide team of coaches are trained to help you set your goals, explore the possibilities, and guide you through the process of discovery at no cost to you. You heard that. At no cost to you. Why would you not try to discover this? This is amazing. So I have got a link to that in the show notes for you so you can start that journey today. We have one final episode left. Yes, you heard me. We only have one left. Marissa and Tamara, they have taught you what it means to revolutionize your career. But in our next and final episode, we're going to share stories from people who have put their words into practice and in turn have changed their lives because of it. Plus, find out what it means to have found your primary aim in life and learn if you're in fact living it. It's an episode that you do not want to miss. I'll see you then, and never forget, keep an open mind and always remember what's possible.